They called it the HMS brick, not because it was proud or polished or powerful, but because it looked like someone grabbed a construction block, welded engines to one end, and dared it to defy gravity. No sleek curves, no elegant fin, no art, just angles, just plates, just stubborn, unapologetic mass. From a distance, it didn't glide, it lurched, it didn't gleam, it glowered, a matte slab against the glitter of the stars. Even its paint looked tired, like someone had argued with a brush and lost. If you listened to the open comes when it jumped into a new system, you'd hear its snorts, chuckles, full-on alien laughter bubbling across the void. The brick was a punchline with thrusters. Every enemy fleet that spotted it reacted the same way. Are the humans serious? They were used to ships that whispered sophistication, crystal hulls, living metal, blue-white shields that bloomed like flowers. The brick had none of that. No war siren, AI, no cloaking veil, no shimmering shield harmonics. Just armor so thick it looked bored, cannons that seemed bolted on at odd angles, and engines that sounded like they were coughing up their last favor from physics. And yet, it kept showing up. Picture it. A glossy Cathor cruiser rotating slowly to admire its reflection in a nearby nebula cloud. When the scanners ping, a rectangle, a literal rectangle approaching. Not flanking, not hiding behind an asteroid, not asking permission, just coming, straight line, full burn, like a barstool brawl in motion. If ships had body language, the bricks said, "I'm not here to impress you, I'm here to interrupt you." Alien officers passed around the same joke. How the human designers must have forgotten to open the instruction manual. How they sold the budget to a snack machine. How someone accidentally shipped a warehouse instead of a warship. Even human admirals half smiled when the brick was mentioned. It embarrassed the tidy parts of them. The parts that liked symmetry, thought. But here's the detail that made skeptics lean forward. The brick's silhouette never blinked. Under starlight or sensor glare, its outline stayed brutally simple. Nothing to misread. Nothing delicate to crack. Nothing to finesse. The more you looked, the more it felt like staring at a decision, a declaration. Crew transfer footage, grainy handheld, always a little shaky, told the same story from up close. Corridors were narrow and unapologetic, handholds where other ships boasted holographic signage, bulkheads studded with bolts the size of thumbs, no decorative lighting, no ambient mood, just a practical, relentless insistence that everything on board should work even when nothing else does. The crew joked about it, the way people in a storm joke to keep their hands warm. Welcome to the brick. Mind your elbows, trust the floor. Why did everyone laugh? Because complexity loves an audience. Because the galaxy had fallen in love with its own reflection. Golden hulls, opera-singing computers, ballet-dancing fighters. The brick was a heckler at that show. It plomped down the aisle in muddy boots and sat in the front row. It reminded everyone that space doesn't care about your choreography. It only cares if you stay in one piece. Now, attention, this part matters. The brick had no business surviving the first 5 minutes of modern combat. On paper, on a whiteboard, in a war room, in a committee, obliteration was guaranteed. But paper doesn't breathe. Committees don't feel recoil. And the void has a wicked habit of turning the smart thing brittle at the worst possible moment. The alien laughter wasn't just arrogance, it was relief. Relief that the universe still worked the way they'd been taught, that their strategies still mattered, that a ship without elegance couldn't possibly possess an edge. Nothing that ugly could be dangerous, right? Except ugliness isn't the opposite of strength. Ugliness is the absence of permission. The brick didn't ask the galaxy to approve its look. It refused to play dress-up. That refusal did something strange to anyone watching. It made them underestimate it. It made them sloppy, and sloppy loses wars. Listen closer and you'd catch the brick's engines talking, throaty, uneven, a beat like an old heart that refuses to retire. Its comes were clear, clipped, and thrillingly human. Course lock, plates holding, brace, no dramatic speeches, no shimmering fanfare. The kind of voice that says a thing because it needs saying and then goes back to the work. Inside the mess hall, mugs rattled against steel as the ship accelerated. Someone had welded a plaque above the hatch. "If IT's not broken, IT hasn't met us yet." Another plaque below it, smaller. "If IT is broken, we still go." You don't find that kind of poetry in a museum ship. You find it in places built by people who expect to be interrupted by reality and choose to show up anyway. And those guns, they weren't arranged to impress a photographer. They were arranged to interrupt problems, stubs, barrels, launchers like knuckles around a fist. The brick didn't pretend to be a duelist. It presented itself as a collision you could fire. Efficient? Maybe not. Effective? That's a different question. And it's the one that keeps admirals awake. Here's the twist you don't see coming until it's too late. Predictable ships invite predictive tactics. Predictive tactics invite overconfidence. Overconfidence invites shortcuts. The brick offered none of those invitations. There was nothing to decode, no glimmering algorithm to anticipate, no graceful maneuver to read, just mass momentum. And the human habit of doing the stubborn thing precisely when the smart thing fails. So go ahead, laugh at its profile, snicker at the name, share the clip where it drifts a little off-center and corrects like a shopping cart. But keep your eyes on the long shot, the one where the brick refuses to vanish from the sensor board. Watch the way every enemy fleet that spots it can't help but watch a second longer than they planned. That extra beat is all the brick ever asks for. One distracted heartbeat, one hiccup in a perfect plan. Because a joke that keeps showing up stops being a joke. It becomes timing, and timing, in war and in life, is everything. The first time the brick entered real combat, the galaxy tuned in like it was a comedy special. Everyone wanted to see the box, with engines, finally get reduced to the space dust they were sure it deserved. The enemy was the Cathor Empire, a reptilian species infamous for their arrogance. Their ships were works of art, sleek, scaled like living beasts, shimmering with green-gold armor. They were warriors bred for conquest, predators who had never known defeat. And now, they were facing a rectangle. When the brick appeared on their sensors, the Cathor didn't even raise shields. They opened communications on every channel just to mock it. "Humans," one commander hissed, his forked tongue curling with laughter. "Do you intend to bludgeon us with geometry?" Another joined in. "Is this a freighter that got lost? Or perhaps a construction drone looking for bricks to stack?" The cum feeds echoed with alien laughter, sharp, cruel, merciless. Even neutral observers, traitors, mercenaries, smugglers drifting at the edges of the battle laughed with them. The brick looked like the galaxy's worst prank, a scrapyard glued together, a joke dressed as a warship. And if humanity wanted to parade their stupidity in front of the stars, then fine, the Cathor would be happy to smash it and make a lesson out of them. But when the Cathor fleet fired the first volley, something strange happened. The brick didn't dodge. It didn't twist like a serpent or blink behind a shield curtain. It simply took the hit. Plasma rounds splashed against its armor, scattering like raindrops against a bunker. Metal scorched, paint peeled, but the ship kept coming, relentless, silent, almost insultingly casual. The Cathor laughed again until the brick started shooting back. Its cannons didn't fire in neat precision salvos. They didn't dance between targets with computerized elegance. Instead, the brick's guns unleashed pure chaos. Heavy shells thundered from crude launchers, arcing wildly through space. Lasers sputtered in bursts, not surgical beams but messy flares of light. Missiles flew in swarms, spiraling unpredictably, as if even they weren't sure where they'd land. And yet ships began to fall. One Cathor destroyer vanished in a fireball when a stray missile slammed directly into its engine core. Another cruiser took 3 heavy shells to the hull. Each one fired without any obvious aiming pattern, and broke apart like a toy snapped in half. The fleet's formations crumbled not because the brick outmaneuvered them, but because it refused to play by the rules of war everyone else followed. Imagine a chess grandmaster sitting down across from an opponent, only for that opponent to ignore every move of the game, flip the board, and still somehow checkmate him. That's what fighting the brick felt like. The Cathor's laughter died quickly. Their cum channels, once full of taunts, now carried shouts of alarm, panicked orders, desperate attempts to recalibrate targeting systems. "Its trajectory doesn't make sense," one officer screamed. "It should be crippled already," cried another. But the brick didn't listen. The brick didn't care. The brick just charged. Alien admirals were trained to predict, to anticipate. They studied probabilities, simulations, endless patterns. But how do you predict something that doesn't predict itself? How do you counter a ship that fires at random, absorbs punishment like a sponge, and moves forward with the blind determination of a battering ram? That was the nightmare that Cathor faced. The battle should have been a massacre for humanity. Instead, it became the Cathor's humiliation. Their fleet, once so confident, broke apart under the storm of chaotic fire. Their laughter twisted into silence, then into screams, then into nothing at all. And when the last cruiser exploded, The void grew very, very quiet. The observers who had tuned in expecting a comedy found themselves staring at a horror show instead. They replayed the footage in disbelief. This ugly human box, shrugging off weapons fire, vomiting chaos in every direction, and somehow leaving an entire alien fleet in ruins. The brick drifted in the silence, scarred but unbroken. Its gums crackled once before jumping to hyperspace. A human voice cutting through the void with chilling simplicity. Mockery acknowledged, victory achieved. And just like that, the galaxy learned a lesson it would never forget. You can laugh at humanity's ships, you can laugh at their designs, but you should never laugh while the brick is pointing its guns at you. Every admiral, every strategist, every alien academic who survived the first encounters with the brick sat back in stunned silence, trying to understand how it worked. How could a ship so ugly, so clumsy, so dumb turn advanced fleets into scrap? It defied logic, and yet there it was, drifting victorious across battlefields that should have been its grave. The whispers started immediately. Maybe the humans are hiding something. Maybe the brick isn't what it looks like. Some swore it was just a disguise, that beneath its boxy armor lurked some god-tier supercomputer. Others insisted it had secret shields, invisible to scanners, a miracle of human technology. But the truth was stranger than any theory. The brick was exactly what it looked like. It was stupid by design. While every alien navy obsessed over elegance, quantum targeting systems, neural-linked captains, and shields calibrated to the frequency of enemy fire, human engineers took a different path. They built a warship with no polish, no finesse, and absolutely no interest in the galaxy's definition of smart. The brick's hull was forged thicker than anyone thought reasonable. Its armor wasn't layered with exotic energy. Filled it was just slabs of reinforced alloy stacked like medieval castle walls. No computer-controlled fragility. Just bulk. Pure, unapologetic bulk. Its weapons, overbuilt cannons that didn't care about precision. Shells the size of trucks. Missiles packed with explosives, not delicate smart systems. Guns arranged not for symmetry but for coverage. The brick didn't need pinpoint accuracy when it could blanket entire sectors of space in destruction. And its things those baffled alien tacticians couldn't believe it were manual. Levers, wheels, buttons you had to slam with your palm. Where alien ships ran on fragile quantum processors, the brick's controls could be operated by a half-asleep miner who barely understood which end of the ship was front. Hack-proof, jam-proof. You couldn't shut it down remotely because there was nothing smart enough on board to shut down. Here lay the hidden genius of stupidity. Every alien fleet depended on sophistication. Every ship was a ballet dancer. But ballet dancers break ankles when the stage floor shifts. The Cathor weapons were tuned to predict evasive maneuvers, but the brick didn't dodge. Their algorithms tried to anticipate shield harmonics, but the brick had no shields. Their systems looked for AI counterpatterns, but the brick had no AI to out. Every weapon designed to break smart ships was wasted against a ship that proudly refused to be smart. What they saw as stupidity was actually freedom. Freedom from overengineering, freedom from predictability, freedom from being hacked, tricked, or manipulated. And then there was the crew. Aliens expected elite officers wired to their ships, commanders fused with data streams, strategists armed with centuries of tactical lore. What they found aboard the brick instead were humans who looked more like dock workers than soldiers. Farmers who had traded soil for starlight, miners who treated the ship like another stubborn piece of rock to blast through, mechanics who believed duct tape was an acceptable solution to half the universe's problems. These weren't polished warriors, they were stubborn humans, and that stubbornness meant they didn't panic when things got strange. They didn't freeze when systems flickered. They kept pressing buttons, pulling levers, and firing everything until the threats stopped moving. Simple, brutal, unstoppable. The brick wasn't chaos by accident. It was chaos on purpose. Every time it fired, every time it lurched forward, it produced results no alien computer could predict. To outsiders, it looked clumsy. To the crew, it was just human nature. Make noise, make fire, and keep moving forward until the other side gives up. And it worked because the galaxy didn't know how to handle chaos. They had built an entire civilization on control, precision, and perfection. They had forgotten that sometimes the crudest hammer is the deadliest tool. The real punchline: humanity knew exactly what it was doing. Engineers who designed the brick wrote it into the specs. Stupidity is a feature, not a flaw. The ship's creators understood that the galaxy's obsession with smart left them vulnerable to the one thing they weren't prepared for: determination. The brick was not just a ship, it was a reminder, broadcast in every battle, that sometimes the surest way to win isn't with brilliance, but with the refusal to play the same game as everyone else. So while aliens tried to unravel its secret, searching for hidden genius, the truth was blunt, almost insulting. The brick was a warship designed to be too dumb to fail, and in a galaxy addicted to complexity, that stupidity was the sharpest edge humanity had ever wielded. The galaxy could not believe what it had just witnessed. A rectangular, ugly, clumsy, industrial-looking brick had not only stood its ground but had annihilated fleets that were supposed to be untouchable. The result was chaos, not just on the battlefield but in the minds of every alien strategist, scholar, and armchair theorist across the stars. And chaos breeds stories. After the Cathor humiliation, rumors about the brick exploded across interstellar networks. News feeds replayed the same grainy footage of the battle. A crude human vessel charging headlong, shrugging off plasma, spitting fire like an unhinged volcano, and leaving sleek alien ships drifting in flames. At first, the commentators laughed just as they had before the fight. It must have been luck, they said, a statistical anomaly. But the laughter felt thinner now, nervous, forced. Behind every chuckle was a question that none of them wanted to voice. What if this wasn't luck at all? Theories bloomed like weeds. One of the most popular theories claimed that the brick wasn't dumb at all. It was secretly piloted by a gotcha, artificial intelligence, far beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Think about it, said one Cathor professor, his crest trembling in a recorded interview. The chaotic firing patterns, the unpredictable maneuvers, what looks random to us, might actually be ultra-precise calculations by a machine intelligence we cannot comprehend. Conspiracy boards lit up. Was the brick actually the disguise of some ancient Earth soup? Had humans tapped into forbidden machine learning algorithms? Was every clumsy spin and awkward volley secretly perfect? It was nonsense, of course. Inside the brick, half the time the gunnery crew had no idea which button they'd just pressed. But the galaxy, desperate for explanations, clung to the AI myth like a shield against the unsettling alternative. That it really was just that dumb. Others whispered a darker possibility. The brick was a suicide weapon. They claimed it was filled with unstable reactors, its very core, a ticking bomb. The humans, they said, had designed a ship whose only purpose was to ram into enemies and detonate with apocalyptic force. The crew, if they existed at all, were probably mindless drones or brainwashed zealots, throwing themselves into battle with no concern for survival. The theory spread because it fit the brick's behavior, charging straight into enemy formations, shrugging off damage, refusing to retreat. What kind of sane species would fly such a monstrosity unless it was meant to die spectacularly? But reality was more absurd. The crew weren't zealots. They were bored, underpaid, and often eating cold noodles in the mess hall. They didn't dream of dying gloriously, they just wanted to make it home alive. And somehow, against every probability, they kept doing exactly that. Among the more dramatic species, a cult-like myth emerged. They claimed the brick was piloted not by soldiers, not by AI, but by humans who had gone insane. That explained everything: the reckless charges, the chaotic fire, the refusal to fight like anyone else. The idea of a crew of lunatics steering the ugliest warship in the galaxy terrified alien admirals. How do you outthink madness? How do you predict someone who doesn't even try to predict themselves? If the brick was crewed by madmen, then facing it was like fighting the storm itself, wild, formless, untouchable. The truth, though, was even more insulting than all the grand theories. The brick's crew weren't geniuses, zealots, or lunatics. They were ordinary people. Farmers drafted two-man turrets, miners promoted to engineers because they already knew how to keep rusty machines running, dock workers who understood leverage better than any academy-trained officer. They weren't trained in elegance. They were trained in persistence. And persistence, when wrapped in armor plates and armed with cannons the size of shuttles, was more terrifying than any perfect algorithm. But the galaxy wasn't ready to face that truth. It was easier to believe in conspiracies than to accept that ordinary humans, with their duct-taped consoles and stubborn refusal to quit, were beating the best fleets in existence. The more the brick fought, the more these theories multiplied. Each battle ended the same way: alien fleets shattered, human lunatics victorious, and with every victory, alien governments grew more paranoid. Some began to classify the brick as an anomaly-class weapon, too dangerous to engage directly. Others drafted entire manuals on counter-brick tactics, though none of them ever worked. A few desperate voices even suggested treaties alliances with humanity, just to avoid ever facing that cursed rectangle in combat again, because slowly, painfully, one terrifying possibility was sinking in across the stars. What if the brick wasn't an anomaly? What if humanity had more? The laughter that once echoed across channels was gone now. In its place was a silence filled with unease, a silence filled with questions that had no comforting answers. And above all, those questions loomed the most dangerous thought of all. If this was what humanity could do with its dumbest warship, what would happen when they started building smart ones? The galaxy had laughed at the brick once. That laughter had burned out fast, replaced by unease, then whispers, then fear. But fear has a way of uniting enemies. And nowhere was that more clear than at Draven's Belt, the place where three alien empires, ancient rivals who had hated each other for centuries, joined forces for one single purpose: destroy the humans. Ridiculous warship once and for all. Draven's Belt was no ordinary battlefield. It was a sprawling asteroid field, a graveyard of shattered moons, spinning slowly in the dark. Navigating it required precision. One false move, one poorly calculated burn, and a ship would be torn apart by drifting rocks the size of cities. To most commanders, the belt was a nightmare. To the brick, it was just another wall to run through. The Cathor brought their cruisers, sleek and sharp. The insectoid Vrelhiv swarmed with living bioships, their hulls pulsing with alien ichor. The crystalline Oran fleet shimmered like blades of light, their ships refracting starlight through translucent armor. 3 empires, hundreds of ships, all converged on one target. Their plan was simple: form a blockade, herd the brick into the belt, and crush it under overwhelming firepower. No human ship had ever faced such a trap. No ship should have survived it. When the brick dropped out of hyperspace, every alien channel lit up with anticipation. There it was, boxy scarred, still painted in peeling gray, the ugliest ship in the galaxy, charging straight into the lion's den. Alien commanders sneered. This would be easy. This would be quick. This would be the end of humanity's joke. But the brick didn't hesitate. It didn't stall at the sight of the blockade. It didn't weave or faint. It simply accelerated, engines roaring, plowing straight into the asteroid field as if the hundreds of warships waiting for it were nothing more than an afterthought. The blockade opened fire. Plasma lances carved through the void. Bioplasma spit from insectoid hulls. Crystalline beams refracted into deadly webs of light. It should have been the end. But the brick had a different philosophy. Don't dodge, don't dance, don't die. Asteroids shattered as enemy fire missed its stubborn straight-line charge. The brick's absurdly thick armor soaked up hit after hit, shaking and screaming but never giving in. Where precision ships tried to weave delicately between the rocks, the brick simply broke them apart, smashing straight through with the grace of a hammer through glass. Inside, crew members were thrown against bulkheads, swearing and laughing at the same time. Warning lights blazed, but they'd seen it all before. Hull breach on deck 6. Someone shouted, "Patch it with plating." Came the reply. No panic, no hesitation, just stubborn momentum. And then the brick fired back. Not in clean, disciplined volleys, not with elegant targeting. Its guns erupted in a storm of chaos missiles, corkscrewing, cannons pounding, lasers spraying like wild fireworks. But in the madness, alien ships began to die. A Cathor destroyer, perfectly shielded against precision strikes, was torn in half by a shell that should have missed but didn't. A Vrelhiv carrier, designed to outmaneuver any logical opponent, panicked when an asteroid the brick had rammed spun into its path, crushing its hull. An Oran battleship, its crystal armor tuned to deflect coherent beams, cracked under a dumb, brute force missile barrage that ignored finesse entirely. The trap began to unravel. Alien commanders screamed across maintain formation, don't let it through. But their fleets, built on elegance and choreography, couldn't adapt to stupidity. The brick didn't play the game, it made its own. Ships collided, trying to avoid its reckless trajectory. Weapons fire went astray in the asteroid chaos. Panic spread like a virus, as one by one, the 3 great empires saw their proud warships reduced to wreckage by a clumsy box of steel. Neutral observers watching the battle streams fell silent. The laughter was gone now, replaced by a gnawing dread. If this was how the dumbest human ship fought, what chance did anyone have against their entire fleet? Hours later, the belt was silent again. Hundreds of alien ships reduced to glowing debris fields. The proud alliance, broken in one battle, and at the center of it all, battered, scorched, leaking atmosphere in places but still flying, was the brick dot. It broadcast no speeches, no taunts, just one simple human message: target eliminated, course set, moving on. Then its engines flared, and it lumbered away, leaving silence and wreckage in its wake. The Battle of Draven's Belt became a legend, not just because of the fleets destroyed, but because of what it meant. Fear had now gone viral. Across the galaxy, entire worlds whispered the same question: if one brick could destroy 3 empires in a single battle, what would happen if humanity built more? From that day on, the galaxy no longer saw the brick as a joke. It was a nightmare shaped like a box, wrapped in steel, fueled by stubbornness, and armed with the terrifying truth that unapologetic stupidity could beat brilliance, and nightmares, once born, never really die. The Battle of Draven's Belt should have ended the brick instead. It ended the confidence of the galaxy. 3 empires, hundreds of ships, advanced fleets working in flawless coordination. And yet, when the smoke cleared, all that remained was wreckage and a single human warship, limping calmly through the void, scarred but alive. That image spread faster than light. Every screen, every news feed, every alien bar on every colony replayed the same scene: the ugliest ship in the galaxy, sailing away from the most impossible victory in living memory. That was the day fear took root. From that day forward, one question haunted alien commanders: is the brick here? It became a ritual before every battle. The moment fleets formed up, captains demanded sensor sweeps, admirals whispered to intelligence officers, civilian traders, caught in war zones, prayed not to hear that name. The brick had transformed from a single ship into a shadow that stretched across entire star systems. It didn't matter if humanity sent it or not. The possibility was enough. Armies delayed offensives, commanders stalled attacks, entire campaigns ground to a halt because of a rumor, a faint blip on a long-range scan, or a distorted transmission that might be the brick. The dumbest warship in the galaxy had become its sharpest psychological weapon. There are stories, plenty of them, about alien fleets surrendering without a single shot fired. One Cathar commander, a veteran of dozens of wars, gave the order to retreat the moment his sensors picked up a boxy silhouette emerging from hyperspace. His entire fleet, 30 ships strong, jumped away before even confirming if it really was the brick. Later, intelligence revealed it had been nothing more than a human cargo hauler shaped vaguely the same. But the damage was done. His enemies mocked him, his own people demoted him, and still, he swore he'd done the right thing, because if it had been the brick, he and his fleet would already be dust. Another time, a crystalline Oran colony abandoned its planetary defenses entirely, evacuating millions of citizens, all because a long-range probe reported a rectangular object approaching. It wasn't the brick, it was an asteroid, but fear had made the difference irrelevant. The irony was cruel. At first, the galaxy laughed at the brick because it looked like a joke. Now they feared it for the same reason. Its ugliness had become part of the terror. Sleek warships made sense. You could analyze them, admire them, understand them. The brick was an insult to logic, a middle finger to everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. To fight it meant admitting that everything you'd built, your strategies, your weapons, your polished perfection, meant nothing in the face of brute, stupid persistence. Soon, stories about the brick multiplied faster than facts. Some said it was invincible, that it repaired itself between battles like a living thing. Others swore it could split into smaller ships, each just as dumb and deadly. There were even whispers that the brick wasn't built at all, that it had grown, forged by some cosmic accident, and humans had simply learned to steer it. The more ridiculous the rumor, the more it spread, because deep down, no one wanted to face the truth. The brick wasn't supernatural, it was just human, and humanity's strength lay not in brilliance, but in stubborn refusal to lose. And with every victory, humanity transformed, not technologically, not yet, but politically, strategically, and psychologically. They realized the brick was more than a warship. It was leverage. It was intimidation. It was the power to make enemies doubt themselves before the first shot. Human commanders began to exploit this. Sometimes they didn't even send the brick, they just let the galaxy think they had. They'd broadcast distorted signals, or let rumors slip, and watch as enemy fleets hesitated, faltered, or fled. The brick didn't need to fight every battle. It just needed to exist. By the time the brick had fought a handful of campaigns, the galaxy was living in a new era. Battles weren't decided by strategy alone. They were decided by fear. In the old days, admirals studied enemy formations, fuel reserves, and tactical data. Now they studied one thing: probability charts of the brick's location. Governments diverted resources not to win wars, but to avoid crossing paths with that terrible rectangle. Entire alliances were formed on the promise that together they might just survive it. But none of them believed it fully, because deep down, every alien leader shared the same dread-filled thought: if one dumb human warship could destroy empires, what would happen if Earth decided to build 100? And so the brick became something more than steel, more than cannons, more than the crew within it. It became a shadow cast across every star system, a whisper in every war council, a chill down every admiral's spine. The dumbest ship in the galaxy had destroyed not just fleets, but certainty. And once certainty dies, fear rules everything. In the silence of deep space, the brick still drifted forward, scarred but undefeated. And across the galaxy, entire civilizations held their breath, waiting for the day that dreadful silhouette appeared on their scanners. Because in war, laughter fades fast, but fear endures. From the outside, the brick was already a nightmare, a clumsy rectangle that defied reason and destroyed fleets without apology. But step inside, and the picture shifted from nightmare to something stranger, something raw, human, and far more terrifying to the galaxy than they could ever comprehend. Because if the outside of the brick was ugly, the inside was chaos, barely held together by steel, duct tape, and sheer human stubbornness. Alien ships were temples, polished corridors glowing with ambient light, walls lined with elegant hollow panels, everything designed to impress and intimidate. By comparison, the brick's interior looked like the back room of a failing factory. Pipes hissed steam at random intervals. Power conduits were patched with scavenged metal plates. The smell was equal parts grease, burnt circuits, and recycled air filters that hadn't been replaced in months. Everywhere you looked, there were signs of improvisation: wires held in place with rope, bulkheads welded over again and again, sometimes crooked, sometimes scorched, but always functional. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. And the fact that it worked horrified the galaxy far more than any polished machine ever could. The galaxy assumed the brick was commanded by elite super soldiers, maybe even fanatics bred for madness. The truth was far more unsettling. The crew of the brick pick were ordinary humans: miners, farmers, dockworkers, people drafted or volunteered because they had the right set of calloused hands, not the right academy diploma. Their uniforms rarely matched. Their boots were scuffed. Their laughter echoed down the steel corridors louder than the alarms. And yet, when battle came, they worked with an ease that looked like madness to alien eyes. Gunnery crews slammed fists down on control panels, reloading cannons with the same rhythm they once shoveled coal. Engineers patched breaches mid-fight with whatever was closest, sometimes scrap metal, sometimes kitchen trays, once even a refrigerator door. They weren't trained to be perfect. They were trained to not quit, and that made them unstoppable. The galaxy's finest engineers stared at footage of the brick's interior in disbelief. How could a warship survive running on so little maintenance, so much improvisation? To them, a ship was a fragile balance of perfection. To humans, a ship was something you fixed until it worked. Again, one alien analyst scoffed at the human use of duct tape until reports confirmed that duct tape had sealed over 100 critical breaches aboard the brick. Another mocked the clumsy manual controls until they learned that during a battle, when a Cathor virus infected every nearby fleet's computer systems, the brick didn't even blink. You can't hack a lever. You can't disable a button with chewing gum jammed underneath it. What looked like stupidity was survival. What looked like chaos was flexibility. And what looked like ugliness was the kind of resilience no alien navy could replicate. Step into the mess hall, and you'd find a culture as raw as the ship itself. Metal tables bolted to the floor, coffee mugs rattling with every burn of the engines, jokes carved into the walls with knives. Above the hatch, a plaque read, "If IT still works, don't touch IT." Underneath, another smaller plaque, "If IT doesn't work, hit it harder." The crew lived by those rules. They didn't need elegance, they needed results. And results were what the brick delivered, battle after battle, until even the dumbest fixes seemed like strokes of genius. To the galaxy, the most terrifying thing about the brick wasn't its firepower, its armor, or even its victories. It was the realization that humans weren't hiding behind some miracle technology. The brick wasn't advanced. It wasn't cutting edge. It wasn't the peak of human science. It was ordinary people, ordinary tools, ordinary stubbornness welded together into something extraordinary. That truth rippled through every alien council chamber, every war academy, every emperor's throne room, because if humans could win with a junkyard box crewed by farmers and miners, what would they do when they decided to actually build something advanced? Inside the brick, the engines thundered with a rhythm like an old, weary heart. The walls shook with every shot fired. Alarms blared more often than they stayed quiet. But through it all, the crew carried on patching, laughing, cursing, and refusing to break. Every alien who studied the brick feared the guns, but those who understood the deeper truth feared something far worse, the people inside, because the brick wasn't just a warship. It was a philosophy made metal, a philosophy that said, we don't need perfect, we just need to outlast you. And so the legend grew, not just of the ship, but of the way humans lived inside it, raw, messy, chaotic, and utterly unafraid. The brick was not a warship built to impress. It was a warship built to endure. And nothing terrifies a galaxy of fragile perfectionists more than the realization that their greatest enemy thrives on imperfection. By the time the brick had torn its way through Draven's belt, the galaxy had changed forever. Entire empires trembled at its name. Colonies whispered about it like children whispering about monsters under the bed. Fleets broke apart at the mere rumor of its approach. But not the Ark's dominion. The Arks were different. They were old, proud, and merciless. Where other empires clung to superstition or conspiracy, the Arks trusted only in the cold precision of mathematics. Their fleets were the most disciplined in the galaxy. Their technology was flawless, their strategies perfect, their victories absolute. To them, the fear spreading through the stars was nothing but weakness, and so they prepared to prove it. The Ark's dominion unleashed its masterpiece. A dreadnought the size of a small moon, a leviathan bristling with weapons, engines that glowed like captive suns, and armor layered so deeply it was said no conceivable weapon could penetrate it. This was not a ship. This was a world killer. An entire civilization's pride welded into steel and firepower. The Dominion declared it publicly. This would be the ship to erase the human brick and restore order to the galaxy, across the stars. Billions tuned in. This wasn't just war anymore. This was theater, prophecy, spectacle. The galaxy wanted to see the joke end, to see the ugliest ship ever built, shattered into so much scrap against the Dominion's perfect war machine. When the brick jumped into the system, the dreadnought already waited, its shadow blotting out the starlight. It was a sight to break lesser fleets, a mountain of steel suspended in the void, cannons larger than city blocks, its hull gleaming with unnatural perfection. Around it, an escort fleet of cruisers and frigates formed an iron halo, and then there it was. The brick scarred, scorched, paint peeling, hole pitted with the memory of a dozen battles. It looked more like wreckage than a ship. Compared to the dreadnought, it was nothing, a box-shaped gnat buzzing against a god. The cum channels lit up with alien laughter once again. At last, one Ark's commander sneered, "The joke ends here." The dreadnought struck first. Beams of light carved across the void, cutting through asteroids as if they were paper. Shockwaves rippled outward, hammering the brick from kilometers away. To the galaxy watching, it seemed over in moment. No ship could stand against such force. But the brick did. It didn't dodge. It didn't retreat. It lurched forward. Its armor screamed under the assault, hull plates glowing red. But still it came. Its cannons roared to life, spitting chaos into the void. Shells, missiles, and lasers all at once, messy, undisciplined, unstoppable. The escort fleet tried to surround it. They moved with perfect choreography, arcs and angles polished by centuries of doctrine, but perfection was their weakness. The brick didn't care about doctrine. It slammed missiles into gaps no sane commander would ever target, tore through ships with brute firepower that ignored finesse entirely. One by one, the escorts burned. At last, it was only the brick and the dreadnought. The Dominion's Leviathan unleashed everything: broadside volleys, precision beams, entire missile swarms guided by AI smarter than most civilizations. But the brick was too dumb to predict. Its movements weren't tactics, they were instinct, chaos, stubborn refusal. It zigged where no commander would have zagged. It stalled its engines in mid-battle, spinning like junk. and the dreadnought's targeting systems faltered. Each strike from the brick was wild, almost comically yet devastating. A shell smashed into a reactor vent, a missile slipped through a half-second shield recalibration, fire spread across the dreadnought's perfect hull, each blow carving insult into its symmetry. The galaxy watched in disbelief as the dumbest warship in existence battered the smartest ship ever built. But perfection does not surrender easily. The dreadnought's main cannon powered up, a weapon designed to crack planets. Its core thrummed, light building to unbearable brilliance. One shot would vaporize the brick entirely. Inside the brick, alarms screamed. Systems failed, one after another. Fires raged across decks. The crew knew what was coming. There would be no time to dodge, no chance to survive. And still, they pushed the throttle forward. The brick accelerated. Engines howling, hull shuddering, as if the ship itself screamed in defiance. It didn't matter that the dreadnought was stronger. It didn't matter that logic said this was suicide. The brick had never played by logic. The human warship slammed head-on into the dreadnought, ramming straight into its core reactor. For a heartbeat, silence, then light. A fireball brighter than the sun tore through the void, consuming both ships in a single apocalyptic burst. The brick and the dreadnought vanished together. Reduced to atoms scattered across Draven's stars, the galaxy mourned and cheered in the same breath. The Dominion declared victory, yet their perfect dreadnought was gone. Humanity wept for the brick, yet its legend grew beyond anything a living ship could achieve. Because the lesson was clear. Perfection had been destroyed by persistence. Precision had been undone by chaos. And the ugliest ship in the galaxy had gone out not as a joke, but as the nightmare that toppled giants. Even in death, the brick won. The brick was gone, vaporized in a blaze so bright it scarred the memory of every sensor that recorded it. To most ships, that would have been the end of the story. Wreckage scattered, crew forgotten, just another casualty of war. But the brick was not most ships. Its destruction only deepened its legend. The galaxy replayed that final charge into the Ark's dreadnought again and again. A scarred, boxy silhouette, hurling itself into the heart of perfection and dragging it into the fire. To some, it was madness. To others, it was genius. To everyone, it was unforgettable. Humanity seized upon the brick's sacrifice and turned it into a symbol. Statues were raised, not sleek replicas, but ugly, rectangular monuments that looked like warehouse blocks standing proudly against the stars. Songs were written about the crew, ordinary men and women who had defied empires with nothing but stubborn courage. The brick became less a warship and more a philosophy. Humanity's refusal to yield, even when the odds were impossible. Other species tried to copy the design, slapping together boxy hulls and crude weapons in the hopes of capturing its magic. But it never worked. Their ships fell apart. Their crews lost heart because they missed the truth. The brick wasn't about design. It was about spirit, about flying a coffin-shaped war machine into the jaws of death and refusing to blink. That was something no blueprint could replicate. And so the fear remained. Long after the brick's atoms drifted into silence, alien admirals still flinched at sensor blips shaped vaguely rectangular, colonies still whispered its name in hushed tones, and empires still asked themselves the same question. If this was the dumbest warship humanity could build, what happens when they build something smarter? What began as the galaxy's biggest punchline became its most terrifying legend. The dumbest ship in existence, clumsy, chaotic, proved that stupidity, welded to human stubbornness, could topple perfection. And so the legacy of the brick endures, not a joke, not a failure, but a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous weapon in the universe isn't brilliance or beauty, it's the will to keep charging forward when everyone else expects you to fall. And that, my friends, is the story of the dumbest human warship in the galaxy, the HMS Brick, a ship so ugly, so chaotic, so absolutely ridiculous that entire empires laughed at it, right up until it destroyed them. From its battered hull to its duct-taped hallways, from its stubborn crew to its final blazing sacrifice, the brick proved something no sleek fleet or polished admiral could ever deny. Sometimes, it's not brilliance that wins. It's not elegance. It's not perfection. It's grit. It's chaos. It's the sheer, unshakable will to keep moving forward no matter what stands in your way. And that's why the brick is more than a warship. It's a legend. A reminder that even the dumbest idea, in the right hands, can shake the galaxy to its core. So, if you enjoyed this story, if you felt that same rush of wonder, fear, and awe, that the galaxy must have felt watching the brick carve its way through impossible battles, then don't just let this video fade into the void. Hit that like button, share this story with a fellow sci-fi fan, and make sure to subscribe for more tales of humanity's stubborn, terrifying, and sometimes hilarious adventures among the stars. And hey, drop a comment below. Tell me, if you were aboard the brick, what role would you have played? Would you be the gunner slamming shells into place, the engineer patching holes with scrap metal, or the pilot laughing while ramming straight through an asteroid field? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll be reading every single one. Because here's the truth. The brick may be gone, but its spirit lives on in stories like this, one end in the imaginations of people like us. Together, we keep these legends alive. So until next time, remember, never underestimate the power of persistence, never laugh too hard at what looks weak, and never, ever underestimate humanity.